You know, this question comes up to me all the time, and people are always asking me, well, how do you handle conflict or challenging situations in the salon? And is there a strategy that you use, or how do you deal with the conflict and maintain some kind of harmony within your environment, within the team? Now, this is something that I found has helped me greatly, and I want to share it to you, but it's lengthy, so I'm going to be putting it into 3 particular segments. So this first video, I'm going to be dealing with just what we call a relationship multiplier and what we call the drama triangle. Now, this is just so that you understand how many relationships there actually are, and when there is that many relationships, how you are going to get some conflict and you are going to get some drama, and how to avoid that. So that's going to be this first one. Then the following video after that, then part 2 of that will be about how to eliminate the assumptions, because whenever you have an argument or whenever there's conflict, there's generally 2 people involved or more, and there's some people that have some information, some people have others, and there's unknown, and how do you bring all that to the surface? So that's going to be number 2. And number 3 is going to be finding out their needs. So for those of you as salon owners, you're going to find that you find that there's people will come to you with a problem or with a challenge or with a conflict, a beef, and you've got to dig deeper to find out actually what is the true need that they have. And we're going to talk about that in the 3rd video, and then we'll kind of wrap this all up. But for this first one, I want to take you through first of this. I found this absolutely stunning to me. I'm just going to share my iPad here so you can, there we go. And so I call this is called the relationship multiplier. Now, what does that mean? Well, and this is a mathematical formula, and it kind of astounded me when my teacher showed this to me the first time, and I went, come on, there's no way that you can have a mathematical formula that will show you relationships, and maybe that because math isn't one of my greater skills. However, I'll challenge it a little bit here and run through this with you. This is called what we call the relationship multiplier. And the way that this formula works, it's x squared minus x divided by 2 equals r. Now, in this, r stands for the relationships that you have within your organization, and x stands for how many people are in that team. Okay, so let me give you an example right now. You and I have a relationship. You see me. I don't see you, but we still are connected. So there's 1, which is you, plus 1, which is me. That's 2. So in our relationship, and just to show you the math works here, we have 2 people squared minus 2 for people divided by 2, just because we're dividing that out, would give us how many people that we have. So if you look at the math here, 2 squared, or 2 times 2, equals 4, minus 2 equals 2, divided by 2 equals 1. We have 1 relationship between the 2 of us. Okay, now, let's talk about that. So you'd say, well, that's, great. We had a formula to figure out how many people there were between the 2 of us. I could have told you we had 1 relationship. But when you get more than that, it gets compounded. So let's take a look at this. Let's just say, let's say that you have a typical salon. And a typical salon, at least the way the numbers go nowadays, is they say that there is, in an organization, and most salons have typically 6 stylists that are in them. So let's say you've got 6 stylists and you have 1 receptionist. And those 6 we have would include, let's just say that includes your associates and everybody else. So there's 6 of you, 1 receptionist, you got 7 people. 7 squared minus 7, because that's the number of people, divided by 2. 7 squared is 49, minus 7 equals 42, divided by 2. So in this case, that was with one person, you had 1. 7 people, you now have 21 relationships within the organization. You see it? Let's just say you got 10 people within the organization, and that's 10 squared minus 10 divided by 2. So that would be 100 minus 10 equals 90, divided by 2 equals 45. So look at the math here. Here we have, this is one person. This is one person. Here we have 7, and here we have 10. So moving from 1 to 7 to 10, look at the numbers here, how different, the difference in the number of relationships and how they become much more compounded every time you start to add staff. Now, what does that mean? Well, here's the reality. It just means that the more relationships that you have within your organization means that the tighter and the more difficult it's going to be to move your team forward and forward to success, forward without conflict, etc. The more relationships you have, the more people that you have, the more relationships you have, the people trying to get along, the more you're going to have people not getting along within your organization. So what does that mean? How do we help along with this? Well, here's the first thing that we need to organize or to remember to have within our organization if we want people to get along is, and that is, we always talk about this, and I'm going to put this in nice big caps here so you see it, put it in red. We call it our code of honor. And if you have in your salon a code of honor, and it just means nothing more than a simple set of rules of how we get along with one another. Now, remember, we're not talking about the policies and procedures that you have. Everybody must wear X color. Everybody must come in and be here X amount of time before you work. See, those are all rules that you have in place for the way that you're going to move your business along, but you have to have rules in there that help to solve some of the problems that you know that you're going to get along. So I'm assuming that you've been in business, let's say more than a year, and you know who they are. You know that Chris is the one that's late all the time, etc. So let's just say, and I will tell you, within our own organization, with the organization that we have here, we were finding that we were having meetings and people were either on time, 2 minutes late, 10 minutes late, or whatever, but it was always just getting blown off. So we put in our code of honor, we put in our code that be on time. And as simple as that, just be on time. And our rule number 2 is call and be called. Call and be called means that that if Chris is late, somebody else can come up to me and say, hey, Chris, listen, we have a code of honor and you were late. And it's been happening a lot. So, and I would have to sit there and take it and say, okay, good, look, I understand I was late. I have to be responsible. I can't use excuses. I just say, you're right. I apologize. It came down to even the point in our organization that we had a penalty that was involved because there's a consequence that goes along with everything. And we found as soon as we said, if you're late to the meeting, any of the meetings, that goes in a pot and it costs you $20. Costs you $20. Now, I'm not saying this gives you right to charge everybody $20 if they're late for work, but I'm saying that if there is consequence to some sort, people will behave differently than if there's no consequence. And now to be clear, we donated all the money to charity. Nobody got that money. That you can either do it, give it to charity, or you can, at the end of the year, you can have a nice little party and the staff can take advantage of that. So that, first of all, to remember, if you have a code of honor and your team as a whole makes up all the rules, then they will more likely abide by them than if you try to make them up on your own. So there's much more complicated. If you want more on how to create a code of honor, I can help to walk you through that. If you want to know how to create one for your salon and even want me to come in and do that with you, I can do that digitally or in person. If you want to do that, I can. But so that's how that works. So you have to have a code of honor. You know that everybody is going to get along and you just need tight rules. Now, okay, so let's go on to this next portion that we have on here. And I want to deal with what I call the drama triangle. This typically how's to work. Now, I've worked in corporate life. I've worked in the salon. I've owned businesses, and I've owned salons, and I've been an employee in salons as well. And I know that this is typical. And I'm going to say this with my tongue in my cheek, but please tell me that I'm not the only one that this happens to, and let me paint this out for you. Let's just say that this is kind of how it typically works in a salon. And I got this actually, I didn't invent this on my own. This was from a professor out of out of British Columbia, Canada, who put together what he called a book called The Joy of Conflict Resolution. And this is one of the things that he talked about, and he called it the drama triangle. It would go like this: in the salon, Chris would say something to Becky Sue, and let's say it was happened by happen chance. It might have been a misunderstanding. I don't know if any of you had something that came out of your mouth, somebody misunderstood it, or you said something wrong and somebody got upset about it, etc. So here's what happens typically: is Chris said something to Becky. Becky now is upset, and rather than going back to me, Becky goes to Joe. And now Joe says, "Oh, well, I really like Becky, and Chris was being kind of a jerk, so I'm going to have a kind of a go and have a chat with Chris." And I'll say, "Well, you know, Chris, the way you talked to Becky that was on there, that was completely uncalled for, and she's upset, etc." Now, so let's talk about what happened here. So right now, in Becky's eyes, the way it started at the beginning, I said something. So now I have become, and I am the villain. And I always think of it like the Popeye olive oil and Brutus, or Bluto, I think, I can't remember which his name was, but Popeye was always the hero, olive oil was always the victim, and Bluto was always the one that went in and they try to smash everything up, and there would all be conflict that would happen there. So it's a three-way, gets into this drama triangle, if you see where this is going. So in our case here, I'm the villain. Becky Sue is upset. She's the victim. She goes to Joe. Joe goes to talk to me. Now he wants to be the hero. So now here's what can happen. Here's how this can really get compounded. Joe will come to me. Now, what am I? Now that he's talked to me, give me a stern tongue lashing. Now I'm not the villain anymore. Now I feel like the victim. And then I go to talk to Ann, and I talk to Ann, and I say, "Listen, the way that Joe talked to me, and he said this about me, and I didn't, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't say anything to Becky Sue." And so now Ann goes, and Ann will go. She'll go to let's say Bob, and Bob will now go and talk to whomever. Do you see how all of this gets circular? And nothing gets wrong. And if in this case, if the people are the problem, then now you've moved yourself into a lose-lose scenario. Everybody, quite frankly, is pissed off at everybody else. Pardon me, something's going on with my cords here. Everybody is pissed off with somebody else. But what needs to happen is, here's the way that you handle this. And if you just can make, number one, is tell people to go direct. And the second part of that is rather than having the people the problem, I'm going to see, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Okay, good. Rather than having the people the problem, in this case, get rid of all of that. If you make the problem the problem, so now if you make the problem, then you have, in that case, a win-win situation. Now, here's what this would mean. If Joe would have came to me and said, "Chris, how dare you talk to Ann in that manner?" Then now I personally became the problem, and it becomes personal. It's a person-to-person situation. However, if whomever, it should have been Becky that came right back at me, or if Joe came to me and said, "Look at Chris, what you said to Becky was she took offense to that." And what would happen? You say, "Well, normally I didn't know that. I didn't even feel that I created any offense. That wasn't my intention." And he said, "Yeah, but it was the way, the tone, or whatever this happened. You see, but now here, if he says, that it's the way that you said it was a problem. You see, now the problem becomes the problem. Chris is no longer the problem. And it's easier for people to take when you put it into that manner. So here's what should happen. Either A, what happens is in this case here, let me give me a chance. I'm going to take some of this out of here. If we take this stuff out, and if the situation happens where, let's say Chris said something wrong to Becky, and Becky either goes right back to Chris, and now she has she can say something back to me and go what we call go direct. Then immediately she'll say to me and said, Chris, I don't know if you meant it that way, but the way that you said that to me, I take offense and X, Y, Z. And I can say, I'm sorry. Let me clear that up. Or let's just say that Becky does go, and Becky does go to Joe. Becky goes to Joe. Now, Joe has one of two options. Joe goes back to Becky and says, look at Becky, what you need to do is you need to go to Chris and you need to talk to him face to face and clear that up. And if Becky says, you know what, I don't want to do, I can't do that. Well, we have in our rule that we have in our code of honor, we say go direct. And that means you go direct or you get off it. In other words, if I can't deal with you right now and tell you that I'm feeling that way and I'm just going to mill in that, then that's my problem. I need to just leave that alone. But what we can also do is you can say, I need somebody to help me with this. So Joe might say to Becky, well, listen, Becky, if you don't want, she'll go to Becky, well, you should go to Chris directly. Well, I don't know, Chris is the boss and I excuse me, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Well, Joe could say, well, listen, Becky, what I can do is I can sort of put you two together. So I can go to Chris and say, listen, Becky's having this problem. I would suggest that you have a chat with her and bring this out in the open. See, so now it's back in my court. I can go to Becky and I can say, listen, I understand that I might have said something to offend you. I'd like to chat about that. Now, you see how if you learn to go direct with this, then it takes all the pressure off of it, etc. Okay? So two things on this lesson. The big thing to take away is, number one, to understand the amount of relationships you have within your organization, number one. Number two is that to have and create some rules and code of honor. Create that and have your whole team get together and create them. 8 to 10 rules that you can live by that solve problems that our whole team is having. And then number three is to make sure that your whole team understands how to go direct and how to go with one another, or how to act as an intermediary so that you can calm the situation down. So this is part of the way that we deal with having conflict within the organization, having to calm things down, and how to have a good relationship that makes everybody get along better. Okay. Now, just to remind you, on next week, what I'm going to be talking about is how to get and eliminate the assumptions that are happening within your organization. So stay tuned for that for next week. And remember, if you got any questions about what we talked about before, put that down. Put that down in the chat bar with that. We'll be watching this as it goes along, and then we'll move things forward. And also, remember, is if you know people within the organization that should be joining the Salon Team Training private Facebook page, get them involved. We'll let them in. Okay, cheers. In the meantime, see you next week.